welcome back. We are in week 22 and we are talking again about archetypal symbols here on Flowers and Showers with Seasons and Signs. And so when we're talking about archetypal symbols, just a recap, we have earth and water, which we've already talked about, and we have fire and air. And I'm sure you're not surprised. We'll talk about fire in the next 2 weeks and we'll talk about air today. But these symbols have, well, these literal things, right? Fire, air, water, earth, they literally have been around as long as humans have existed, actually probably longer, but as long as humans have existed, and they're not going anywhere, right? Because if they go, we go too. So not getting rid of earth, not getting rid of water, not getting rid of air, let's hope. And we've come up with ways, we'll talk about this next week, but we've come up with ways to circumvent fire, but still in all, it is one of the more effective uses for many things, which we'll talk about next week. Anyway, so with archetypal symbols, they are always going to be representative of both life and death, both masculine and feminine, and both nurture and destruction. That's all archetypal symbols, all four of them. When we're thinking about air, quite literally, it is going to be our breath and the air around us. So I'm not going into how the atmosphere is, scientifically engineered. I'm not going into the layers of the stratosphere. I'm not going into any of that stuff. Because again, this is more symbolic and what it means in the external world to our internal world. The whole point, of course, is if we're going to look to any external source for an inclination on how we should live, the sources that we look at should not be man-made. We should not be looking at man-made sources because they're fallible. They're liable to mess up. Men and women, of course, humankind, we're imperfect. We try to do our best, and ultimately, we are corruptible. We're in corruptible bodies. We have corrupted states. And when we're looking to outside cues in the world, we often look at the wrong ones. We're looking at social media. We're looking at money. We're looking at reputation and prestige. These are man-made concepts. They're not great ways to structure our lives. What we need to do is look at the things that are eternal, that have been there for longer than us and that will be there longer than us. And from those places, we really need to get our cues, ergo why I'm bringing this content to you. So when we're thinking about air, and we should think about air more than I think we do, like most natural things, we kind of take it for granted and we very much need it. So air is always going to be symbolic of spirit and life, breath, of course, movement. And when we think about movement, we should be thinking about wind and direction. The thing is, air can exist without wind. Wind does not exist without air. And the only time we really pay attention to the air, unless we're thinking about air quality, is when there's wind. Because wind adds that movement to a force we cannot see, that clearly exists, or we would all be dead, but that we can't see. So wind is important and integral to our concept on an understanding of air. So movement, and then of course changes, because the winds of change are changing. You've heard that before. If you know anything about Gone with the Wind, which is a great book and a great movie, and you should go read it because it's so relevant to right now. Talks about the Civil War, and it talks about how the Old South was gone with the wind, quite literally, that wind being the North and the war, coming in and taking that Old South mentality and style of life and eradicating it completely. We do not have a Southern aristocracy in the way we used to, for good or for ill, depending on who you are and your belief system, and we're not going into that right now because that's very loaded. But when we think about the wind and change, often it'll also present challenges. So air and wind is going to be symbolic of spirit, of life, of breath, of changes, of challenges, of movement. Very much so. Very much so. Let's leave it at that. So, when we're thinking about wind, also, we need to be thinking about directions of the wind. So, if you are familiar at all with the Bible, we have north winds, we have south winds, we have east winds, we have west winds. And we also see in literature like the wicked wind, the wicked witch of the west, the wicked witch of the east, right? Those directional challenges. So when we're thinking of direction, we should be thinking of things rising in the east, starting, things setting in the west, endings, right? So the life cycle is always perpetuated in nature just abundantly. I think if nothing else, you've probably gotten that if you've been following along for the last 22 weeks. You can see that what we do in our lives and in human lives is always reflected in nature. We're very much harmonious with nature, even though we don't always realize it or work in tandem with nature in the way we perhaps should. But when you have a north or south wind, historically, literarily, biblically, archetypally, right? It's going to be a more gentle or more welcome wind. It's going to be like a soft breeze that brings in new life, that reinvigorates you, that blows good seed about to pollinate and germinate flowers. It's going to be a welcome wind. It is a welcome wind. As all archetypes, archetypal symbols do have the masculine and feminine aspects to it. I'm sure we're not surprised, sorry gentlemen, that the nurturing aspect of the wind is going to be feminine, because women are nurturers. It's what we do. Literally, biologically, that's what we do. We nurture new life. And so the north and the south winds are going to be primarily your more welcome feminine winds. Your east and your west winds are your more destructive, dry, dangerous, moving, masculine, sorry guys, winds. So in the Bible a lot, you get this wind comes in from the east and it destroys everything. You get that with the plague, you get that with the, you get that with a lot of other things. And same with the west wind. It's going to come in and it's going to destroy whatever is in its way. So you want to beware the east and the west winds, and you welcome the north and the south winds. Even still, let us not forget archetypal symbols are always symbolic of life and death. So the north-south winds are going to be symbolic of life, welcome wind, nurturing, and the east-west winds are going to be symbolic of death, destruction. However, because archetypal symbols are so cool, they all breed new life, right? Because even from death and destruction, you can get new life. So when you get one system that fades out, a new system comes in place. That's just how it goes. And so your north-south wind is a welcome wind, your east-west wind is an unwelcome wind, but all wind brings about changes. And all air is going to bring about life. So what does that mean for us? Now, I am sure you're tired of me talking about changes. But unfortunately, all life is change. We are in a constant state of change. Always. And it is one of the things that as humans, we are the least comfortable with. We are so uncomfortable with the topic of change. And more than that, with the practice of change. We resist it, we rebel against it, we do not care for it. But if nothing else, nature tells us, get comfortable with change because it's coming, right? And even planetary alignment, even the Earth on its axis, everything is constantly changing. So even though you feel maybe like nothing's changed from today to last week, well, our alignment in the solar system has changed, right? Like you're never constant, you're never stagnant, which is a good thing. You don't want to be. So the air, the winds, always going to tell us to embrace change because it's coming. And it's going to bring, oftentimes, if you will let it, new life. So, what does that mean for us? Obviously, embrace change, of course. But it also means our mindset that comes with change should be, hopefully, open. You want to have an open, flowing, not fixed mindset. You want to have a growth mindset. Because if there's nothing, for me, I know the wind is, or air is the creepiest element. It freaks me out the most because you can't see it. It's there, but you cannot see it. So I, as a just human, don't care for air as much as fire and water, perhaps. That's just me. Earth and air are, if I have a preference of elements, which, sometimes you do, I guess, they're not my preference. Air freaks me out. Tornadoes freak me out. Like, it's just a destructive, whirling force of wind that can uproot everything you've ever worked for. Like, no thanks. Like, I'm all set. I don't know how people live in those tornado valley places or tornado alley places, but I am just not that gal. So, like, I might talk a lot about Jersey, but we have, thank the good Lord, very few tornadoes, and for that I am very thankful. Anyway, so with the wind, we cannot see it. We do not know when it is coming. We do not know when the winds are changing. Wind is the most abstract element. It's why in astrology, those that are air signs, Libras, Aquarius, they're going to be the most lofty, the most, again, not always, depends, on some things, but the dreamers, the lofty ones, the ones that don't want to keep their feet on the ground. They're not grounded usually. Having dated my slew of air men, I will say that is true. You can, tell me if you know any of that, but air men are just something else. But anyway, so we want to be aware that there's a mindset that has to come with change. And wind really talks to us about this, because what is your mindset to change? What is your mindset to growth? What is your mindset to breathing new life into something? Are you excited for that? Are you dreading it? How are you the person that always is rushing on to the next thing, headlong, without looking at the consequences? If so, you probably have, maybe almost to a fault, a growth mindset or a goal mindset. Like, I want the next thing. I want the next thing. I want the next thing. Having been that gal and still a little bit am that gal, I get it. That's how I go about life. I'm always looking to the future at a fault, pretty much. Or are you somebody who dreads change? You procrastinate as much as you can before the change comes. You kind of don't want to deal with it. You drag your feet. You procrastinate the change. And, if that is someone I'm very close to, does that a lot. And it drives me crazy because he's always kind of like living in the past, and I'm always kind of like living in the future. And we meet in the present, kind of, most of the time. So what is your mindset to change? Do you embrace it? Do you avoid it? Do you deal with it at the last second? Because one of the best things that we can do for ourselves is accept the reality of what is and what will be, or what can be, or what's going to be. It doesn't mean you have to like it, right? Wise words from my therapist on many occasion, many a thing in my life, but you don't have to like it. You just have to accept it, And the more we rebel against the change, or the more we try to, cover our eyes, the less helpful that's going to be. So the wind should make us think about, what's your spirit in regards to change? What is your perspective on it? Because you already know, I hope, please know, from everything I've talked about in the last 12, 20 weeks, change is constant. Change is always happening, and change is great. Is it a little scary? Yes. Is it a little uncertain? Sure. Yes, of course. So what is your mindset? Do you have a fixed mindset? Do you have a growth mindset? Mindset is so important. If you don't know anything about mindset, please do yourself a favor and read Dr. I think her name is Carol Dweck. D-W-E-C-K. Carol Dweck. And she has a great, so she's kind of not the seminal author. I think she actually might be the seminal author on seminal, just meaning the first real person to bring this up or have a theory on it or research on it. She's one of the first to talk about growth and fixed mindsets. And so many of us, without realizing it, have belief systems that talk about fixed mindsets, and we don't even know it. Fixed mindsets are limiting beliefs, are inherently negative beliefs like I can't do this, or I can't make that money, or I can't make that change, or I can't, don't, won't. Those are limiting and fixed mindsets. So what is your mindset to change? The air and the wind tells us that new life comes with change if we focus on that. The winds of change are always going to bring something new. However, whether it destroys you or whether you welcome it is up to you. It's up to your mindset. It's up to how you perceive things. So what is your perception on change? That is what we're talking about this week. And it would really behoove you to consider, how do I feel when change comes? For me personally, I played this weird game where I'm excited for change and I'm looking forward to change, and it's not coming fast enough. So I am going to take it upon myself to try to implement the change in some way. Now, that's not very effective, and it's gotten me into a lot of trouble in a lot of places. But anytime there was a big transitional phase in my life, I would try to force that along. And I'm a nightmare when it comes to that. I can't even lie. So, like I said, it's not funny. It actually really has got me into a lot of trouble. I was ready to leave my last job, and it wasn't happening fast enough. You can't rush time. And so instead of, waiting it out or letting that chapter nicely come to a close, I sort of weirdly rushed it along. And I've done that a lot in my life. I think I actually talked about that maybe 2-3 weeks ago. So I love change. I just want it to come faster. And I don't want to always finish out what I'm doing in a nice wrapped way. Maybe that's you. If it is, I get you. If it's not, if you're the person that is like, I know I should have left this job 6 years ago, but still here. I know I should have left this relationship 6 years ago, but still here. You are living in a sort of fear lack mentality. You fear change. You fear the unknown. You fear leaving your comfort zone. And again, growth happens outside of our comfort zone. So if you're that person, this is for you too, because we have a love-hate, mostly hate kind of, but we have a love-hate relationship with change. And the winds of change are always coming. They're always blowing. That is a constant. That is the thing that always happens. So examine your mindset about change and about movement in your life. And we'll be talking more about it this week. And I hope you enjoy it. See you guys soon.